How can I review a Batman Arkham Knight developed by Rocksteady? A video game that takes place after Scarecrow successfully seizes power of Gotham City by announcing his plan to unleash a powerful fear toxin on a never-before-seen scale on Halloween night, resulting in the evacuation of Gotham's citizens. Now with Gotham's only remaining inhabitants consisting of Gotham's petty and most dangerous criminals, the Caped Crusader sets out to save his beloved city yet again. But when the self-proclaimed Arkham Knight teams up with Scarecrow to seek terrible vengeance on the Dark Knight for reasons that are unknown, Batman's physical and especially his mental strength is tested like never before. So like most people out there, I am a huge fan of the Arkham series. I played the first one back when it came out in 2009. It was like late September when I got around to playing it. And that's because I had swine flu and I was staying home and I was really sick, so I just wanted to pass the time with a video game. And I played the demo and I enjoyed it. Didn't really know that much about it. Honestly, I thought it was going to be a game that was just cashing in on the Batman name. Little did I know that I was incredibly wrong. Not that it really needs to be said, but Arkham Asylum is a great game and it's among my favorite games of all time. And one of the many reasons why it's one of my favorite games of all time is because it pays such great respect to the source material. And if you're somebody who is a Batman fan, whether you're a fan of the animated TV series, the comics, the Christopher Nolan movies, the Tim Burton movies, there's something to appreciate about this game because it does capture the essence of Batman. As for the sequel, Arkham City, it's pretty much just like Arkham Asylum, but arguably better. As for Arkham Origins, the third entry in the series, I don't count it because 1, it was not made by Rocksteady, 2, it's a prequel, and 3, the biggest reason, it's not that great of a game in my personal opinion. I remember it being incredibly glitchy, and not only that, but it's just a pale rehash of Arkham City. So now we have Arkham Knight, the third and final installment in the Arkham series developed by Rocksteady. And it's a game that has got a lot of controversy because of its terrible PC port. There's been a lot of crashing, a lot of bugs, just a lot of bad stuff. As for me, I played it on the PS4 and I did experience a couple of bugs and one hard crash, but it was nothing that really detained me from enjoying the game.
Screw Batman. He's overrated. Couldn't even keep up with this in this piece of crap. Road's blocked. Turn around.
But as for comparing Arkham Knight to its predecessors, I don't think it's as good as those games, which I will talk about a little later. But for now, I want to talk about some of the things that are great about this game. First of all, the graphics are incredibly detailed in this game, whether you're talking about the environments or the character models. There are also times in the game where the camera will zoom in on the back of Batman's cowl, and if he's like out in the rain, you can see like rain running down his cowl. It looks really awesome. And when you're gliding across the city, there are like little ripples in the cape, and you can see rainwater running down the cape as well. And speaking of graphics and the environment, I want to go ahead and say this, that the environment is much bigger in this game in comparison to Arkham City. I think that they said that it was like 5 times bigger or something like that. Arkham City kind of felt a little claustrophobic in parts. It didn't really feel like a living, breathing city, but then again, that's because it was kind of like a city that was a prison camp. But I mean, anyway, I digress. This does feel much more alive than the previous Arkham games. And since we are given a bigger portion of Gotham City to explore and just gliding across the city just doesn't quite cut it anymore, what do we get? Well, we get the Batmobile.
Stay here. I'll send someone to pick you up.
What are you doing?
Evening the odds.
Now, the Batmobile has been kind of a controversial add-on to this game because a lot of people love it. On the other hand, a lot of people hate it. For the most part, I love it. Now, driving the Batmobile can be a little off-putting at first because it is a little different, but once I got the hang of it, I enjoy the living hell out of driving that thing around the city because it just kicks ass. I think it kicks ass. And then at any point in time while you're driving it, you could just spring out of the seat and start gliding across the city at a very rapid pace. And every single time I did that, I just felt just a great sense of satisfaction for some reason. So everything driving related to the Batmobile, I absolutely adored. What I didn't like about the Batmobile, and it's not really necessarily with the Batmobile itself, it's more to do with the game, and those are the tank battles. they probably take up maybe about 50% of the game, maybe a little less than that. And they're fun for like the first half of the game, but after that, they get pretty repetitive pretty quickly. Plus, it doesn't help that you fight the same exact enemy types throughout the entire game when you're taking part in these battles, because they're just a bunch of drones, the go-to enemy type in video games. And these battles, they last way too freaking long. And there's so many of them, and it doesn't help either that throughout these battles, the default setting on the control setup is to hold down the L2 button to stay in tank formation for the Batmobile, and that really kind of gets the finger a little tired after a while. But the good news is that you can change it, as I figured out later on in the game, where you can actually set it up to the point where you have L2 as your reverse and R2 as your accelerator, and you just click R1, and you just stay in tank formation without having to hold anything down, which is great. And I'll be honest, there was actually a moment towards the end of the game where I kind of went into a rage moment because of, one, a bullshit death, and two, I had to basically play this whole game of hide and seek with a bunch of tanks all over again. And I was saying, okay, what the hell does this have anything to do with Batman? It doesn't feel like Batman. And it kind of feels like a lesser game. In other words, if this were not Batman, I probably would not have taken an interest in this sort of gameplay otherwise. Since I am already on the subject of combat, I want to continue talking about combat, and that is the hand-to-hand combat in the game where you play as Batman the way this game should be, like the other games. And the combat is honestly, it has never been better. It just looks great. It's really something that I would deem to be perfection in terms of what it is. I know some people might say that it's just button mashing, in a sense that maybe that is the case, but it's beautiful button mashing. And of course there are portions in the game where you are doing the Predator rooms or the Predator environments where you're basically taking guys out in, very stealthy ways, and those are always fun. What's weird is that the tank battles, that shit gets repetitive, but the stuff involving the actual combat with Batman, I never found to be repetitive. Always found it to be very refreshing, very rewarding, and just a lot of fun. I just wish that the game had more of a focus on that style of gameplay, which, the majority of it is, but I just wish that there were more in comparison to the tank battles. And speaking of what could have been, I wish that there were more boss battles in this game. Honestly, you could probably count the number of boss battles on one hand. It's not like the other Arkham games where there are a ton of boss battles. There's a lack of boss battles here, and I think that is a detriment to the game. Another thing that I want to touch on is the side content, and I completed all of it. I 100% the game, and some of it is inspired, while some of it is a little less than inspired. Some of it's the typical, take out these militia people and all that stuff. It can be kind of fun if you want something more out of this game, so I do think it's going to give you something, but there are some really cool ones. For instance, there's this one where you're having to go around Gotham and you're looking for these dead bodies, and the only way you find them is by listening out for opera music, because this killer likes to leave opera music playing around his or her victims. And it leads up to a very, very bizarre boss battle, and it's really something out of like Dead Rising. But if I had to pick my favorite side content, it would probably be the Riddler stuff. Not the collecting of Riddler trophies or solving the riddles, but doing the stuff that involves saving another character that has been kidnapped by the Riddler. That portion of the game I found to be a lot of fun, especially the portion where you're having to use the Batmobile and you're having to basically beat the clock on these Riddler designed tracks where you have all these contraptions and all that stuff. I found that to be just a hell of a lot of fun, and in fact the first one I actually found myself laughing kind of hysterically because I kept on fucking up. It was fun for me. Now I want to briefly talk about the voice acting. I think it kind of goes without saying that Kevin Conroy is the epitome of the Batman voice. He's pretty much what everyone thinks of when they think of how Batman sounds. Nobody quite does the Batman voice like Kevin Conroy, and those DC animated films, I've tried to watch them in the past, and I've seen like little clips on YouTube and stuff, and I find them kind of hard to watch because it's not Kevin Conroy doing the voice. So when I hear Batman and it's not the voice of Kevin Conroy, I'm just like, okay, this ain't Batman. This is not him. As for other voice actors, there's John Noble, who does the voice of Scarecrow this time around. It was not him in Arkham Asylum, but it's him in Arkham Knight. And he does a great job with lending sort of a soft-spoken, bitter coldness to the character's voice. As for other replacements, there's also Jonathan Banks, who does the voice of Jim Gordon. And if you don't know who Jonathan Banks is, he's Mike from Breaking Bad. And it was kind of weird hearing that voice coming out of the character at first, but I kind of got used to it, and it is a really good performance as well. And then there's Troy Baker, who does the voice of pretty much everybody else in the game. No, I'm kidding, but he does do a lot of voices in the game. Two-Face and Arkham Knight, to just name a couple. He does a really good job at voicing the Arkham Knight, but honestly, it's the kind of character that I think could have been probably voiced by anybody. Not saying that that's a bad thing on Troy Baker, because Troy Baker is incredible. I mean, hell, not too many people can do the performance that he did in The Last of Us as Joel. Truly, if there were like an Oscar-worthy performance for a video game performance, that would be it. But like I said, he does do a really good job with what he is given. My problem with the character, though, is the way this character is set up, because the game is supposed to make you think that it's going to be like a big mystery that who this person is, the Arkham Knight is, who this person is under the mask. And it's really, really easy to figure out who this person is. It's either two people, and it's like, well, if it's not this person, well, it's got to be this person, and of course, I was right. I'll be honest, I've never been a big fan of the character because I've never been all that familiar with the character, but, even with that said, I was able to kind of figure out who this person was. Now I want to talk about the story of Batman Arkham Knight, because I think this is by far the best story that we have seen in a Batman game. Because in this game, we go really deep into the psyche of Batman like never before. And there are times where I was playing this game where I genuinely felt concerned and afraid for what was about to happen to Batman. And, in this day and age, it's kind of rare to do that. And this game was able to accomplish such a feat, with me at least. And this game all leads up to a climax that is so incredibly satisfying on every single level. I can't tell you the last time I've been so satisfied with a climax since probably Bioshock Infinite and The Last of Us. It really had me on the edge of my seat. It was excellent. And if I were to give the climax a grade on a scale of 1 to 5, it'd be a 5. I love the climax to this game. But now I want to talk about something that's kind of considered in the realm of spoiler territory. So for those of you who do not want to get spoiled, or for those who have not gotten past a certain point in the game, and that is the Ace Chemicals portion of the game, it's like the first maybe hour or two or so. If you got past that part, then fine, you can stay. I'm not going to spoil anything else outside of that. So for those of you who are still watching, I presume that you are okay with what I'm about to discuss, and what I'm about to discuss is the Joker.
Miss me?
So if you remember at the end of Arkham Asylum, Joker injected himself with a stuff called Titan, which I believe is like another form of venom. It's like a stronger version of that stuff, but I don't remember, so don't quote me on that. But anyway, it transformed him into like this big, hideous monster. What the stuff did, the after effects, when he came down from being this mutant, it basically mutated his blood cells. And so in Arkham City, one of his big schemes was that he took samples of his blood and sent it out to all these hospitals, which infected anybody who took in his blood. So what happens when someone receives mutated blood from the Joker? Well, they basically take on the Joker's personality traits. So in other words, they become the Joker. And if you remember in Arkham City, the Joker actually injects Batman with his mutated blood. So therefore, Batman is slowly becoming the Joker. He's taking on those personality traits while hallucinating and seeing the Joker pretty much everywhere he goes. And I haven't mentioned this already because I presume you have played the other games and you remember what happened at the end of Arkham City, and that's when the Joker died. So the only way the Joker lives on is through the tainted blood and through Batman. And the Joker is voiced by none other than Mark Hamill, and he's the same way I see Kevin Conroy as Batman. He's essential to that role. And this is something that I did not know going into the game. I thought maybe if the Joker were going to make an appearance, it was going to be very, very small. But no, he's like in 90% of the game. In the game, he kind of serves as your Navi to your Link. He's your Ellie to your Joel. Or better yet, he's kind of like your Tyler Durden. He is your conscience. There comes a point in the game where you really do start to wonder, is it Joker that's talking, or is it Batman that's talking?
You put her in my crosshairs, Bats. Sure, she didn't do herself any favors, but it was you. You see, people trust you. They believe in you. They follow you into your war, and you are about to get them all killed.
Again, the Joker serves as an unapologetic window into Batman's psyche, and what you see is something that is incredibly flawed and kind of disturbing. But getting back to the Joker, I've heard some complaints saying that they did not like how this game went back to the Joker, utilizing him as the main villain. And I can kind of understand why, but at the same time though, that's almost, keyword almost, like having a Batman game and not having Batman in the game. Because, let's face it, Batman and Joker, they complete one another. In other words, one cannot exist without the other, and this game even plays around with that idea.
Take a tip from your wingman, Brucey. The ladies hate it when you brood over the ex you failed to save.
As for any last things that I want to say about the game before I give my rating, is that I like how the game plays around with the Halloween theme. I like how that in certain areas that you do see Halloween decorations. I also like how at some point in the game that the environment does shift. I'm just going to kind of leave it at that. There are also portions in the game where you can switch characters. Like, for instance, you can be playing as Batman and then you can switch on a dime to another character. And if you build up a little meter, you can actually do a team takedown. And it's pretty sweet. And as for my last complaint, there's a bit of a lack of inspiration in terms of who you're fighting throughout the game, because most of the people that you fight in the game are militia, Arkham Knight's people, and they all kind of look the same. They're all wearing red camo, and it's just, you know, I would like to have seen a little bit more variation than what I'm seeing here. Good news is that there are variations in terms of the fighting styles. Like, you have the brutes, you have the guys with the swords, the knives, you have the guys with the electric batons. I hated those dudes, and so forth. Overall, despite the problems that I have with Batman Arkham Knight, such as the tank battles and the lack of inspiration in certain areas of the game, I think that Batman Arkham Knight is truly a great game that is worth your money if you haven't bought it already. It's a very fitting end to a phenomenal gaming series, and in this game it makes you feel like Batman like never before, because in this game you get to drive the Batmobile, with the exclusion, of course, the tank battles. So with that said, for the overall experience, I'm going to give Batman Arkham Knight a very strong 4 out of 5, so I do think this game is worth your $60+. And in case you're wondering what I would give Arkham Asylum and City, those would both be 5s, and if you're wondering what my favorite in the series is, it might be Asylum, but just by a hair. And that's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really, really do hope that this wasn't too long, because I have a feeling that this was really way too long. But anyway, if you're somebody who has played Arkham Knight, let me know your thoughts on it. And if you're somebody who has played the other Batman games, let me know your thoughts on those as well. As always, I'm Colin Kirkland, and thank you so much for watching.
Stay tuned to Gotham FM.